This is a video response to Pilgrim1411, who responds to a very old video of mine back when I was still studying in Chicago. And I'm just going to address him in this video. I'm doing this really just in the spirit of education, but also because, I think there's an issue here that's deeper than what's let on in the video. And that is that, the idea of religious intolerance. One of the reasons why I do my videos, this video and others, is not to disprove Christianity or to make Christians feel bad or anything like that. What it is to show commonality between pagans and Christians. A lot of Christians have this idea about pagans and other religions that we're somehow less worthy of enlightenment, that we're maybe even less human. That's definitely what's suggested by the early Christians around the time of St. Patrick, when they referred to pagans as snakes. That we were less than human. We were the lowest of the animals, those that crawl around on their bellies. So, what I'm trying to do is really actually build up religious tolerance and show that there is more than one path to enlightenment. I think we have a disagreement as to what is considered to be like an influence upon Judaism and Christianity. You mentioned that first century, Jews. You said that they didn't have any influence upon them from paganism. Well, I mean, they were in the Roman Empire, so I mean, it seems ridiculous on its face. But let's bring a source into this discussion so that we can be on the same page. There's a Dr. Norman Feldman, and he's actually, for full disclosure, he's Jewish. He is a scholar of Hellenic studies, and he has an article that discusses the influences of Hellenism and Hellenic culture, which includes Hellenic paganism, upon the Jews. So, um, it's an article in a scholarly review magazine, and I'll post the information for you below. But the whole notion that there was no influence from the pagan cultures, which were pretty much Hellenic culture, on the Jews, it's just ridiculous because they were in the Roman Empire. Now, you also said that the early Jews abhorred paganism and they didn't like it. They wanted to separate themselves from it. And that may be true, but you have to remember that just because a child is rebellious doesn't mean it won't take any traits from its parents. Um, Monotheism, early Jewish monotheism, those early monotheists came from polytheism, from paganism. So to suggest that they didn't bring any traits from their pagan ancestors, well, it's pretty ridiculous. Let's talk about mythology for a moment. One of the most famous and early stories in the Jewish text is the story of Adam and Eve. And there are some very universal um, symbols in that story that are previously presented in pagan stories. One of the most common is the world tree. The world tree, which takes a form of the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden story, takes a form of Yggdrasil in the Germanic myths, and there's other trees and other stories throughout pagan culture, and you can read about these. There's a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was a mythologist. He's dead now. He died in the late 80s. I actually started reading about Joseph Campbell in high school. So I mean, this is pretty common stuff. Joseph Campbell also did some interviews with Bill Moyers that are really good too. If you have Netflix, you can rent them on Netflix. I know they have them through Netflix. They're called The Power of Myth, and I strongly suggest that if you want to look at comparative myth and the commonalities that Christianity has with its pagan ancestors, He points out a lot of them in his readings. So the Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell, and definitely look up the Bill Moyers interviews too. They're fascinating, and it really is eye-opening to listen to them. You know, I'm not trying to ridicule Christianity or anything here. Christianity, like other religions, is a beautiful religion, but it's not better than any other religion. And no other religion is any better or worse than any other religion. They're all paths to the divine. Now, we all personally have our preferences. Like, for me, I'm a Hellenist. So Hellenist works best for me. But I can't tell anybody else that their religion isn't going to work for them. We're all trying to reach the divine, however it is that you interpret that. So, and I think that Joseph Campbell really kind of opens your eyes to that. So when you bring up people like Ronald Nash and a lot of the other people that you've cited their books, these are Christian apologists. They're Bible scholars, but they're not historians. They're not, people who study comparative mythology like Joseph Campbell, and they're not people that know a great deal about paganism. So I wouldn't really consider them to be scholarly sources. I mean, like Ronald Nash, for example, he's a pastor. His degree is in philosophy, which philosophy, I'm not, discounting philosophy, but it's not really a degree that pertains to this subject. He's writing with an agenda. He's writing with an agenda to prove that Christianity is better than paganism. Now you claim that the things that I stated in my video have been refuted, but refuted by whom? It seems like the people that you're mentioning, they're all theologians instead of historical scholars or comparable or people who study comparative myth and things like that. Um, People like Joseph Campbell would disagree with you about those things being discounted or being refuted. Now you're claiming that all of the dying and rising gods, according to T.N.D. Menninger, came after Jesus, but that's just simply not true. Um, you know, a lot of Christian apologists have tried to argue this, and their reasoning is they couldn't find any, scholarly writings from that time. But most of the reason why you can't find a lot of written record of that stuff is because the Christians burned it. They burned down the Library of Alexandria on more than one occasion. And so it's you can't just go by what you find out there, but there is some evidence, and I'll point to it for you. There was a festival called Dionysia back in the early centuries before the Common Era, and in the fourth, I think, no, I'm sorry, it was in the 5th century BCE that there was a play called The Frogs, which detailed Dionysus' descent into the underworld and then return. So right there, you have evidence of in early Greek times a play that shows Dionysus' death and rebirth. When someone descends into the underworld, they're dead. That is the land of the dead. So that is one example. I think that when people say things like that, it's pretty obvious they have an agenda, and it's pretty easily refuted. You claim that there's no connection to Isis other than the name Mary, but that's actually not true. Mary was the Egyptian word for heaven, and Isis was considered to be the queen of heaven. So calling her Isis Mary was calling her Isis of heaven. And so, yes, she was, part of that name. If you want any proof of this, there's a book by Gerald Massey, who's an Egyptologist, page 409. Let me look up the name of that book. I'll put it below. But anyway, and there's other people too. There's Isis Unveiled, and that book, kind of details the parallels between Isis and Mary. Also the name Seb, which is close to Joseph, was the name for Earth. So if you've got heaven and earth combined creating a child, that would be Seb and Mary, Joseph and Mary creating the divine child. So that it's the parallels are very similar, and they can't really be discounted like that. There are actually myths as well for Dionysus that suggested his birth was a virgin birth, where Zeus did not sleep with Semele. Instead, after Dionysus was torn apart by the Titans, Semele ate his heart, and that's how she became pregnant with him. Yes, there is a virgin birth story for Dionysus. As for the terminology of virgin in the Greek culture, they actually do have a very documented history of there being virgin goddesses within the Greek culture. There are three that are associated with Olympus, three major goddesses that are virgin goddesses. There is Athena Parthenos, Parthenos meaning virginal, um, and she goes back. She's one of the original Olympians. She is a favored daughter of Zeus, and she is a virgin. Then an even more telling example is Artemis, who at a very young age came up to her father Zeus, who and asked him to make her eternally chaste and eternally pure, and to that she never wanted to that she wanted to be eternally virgin, and that meant exactly what it meant. They actually did value virginity, but only among women in Greek culture. So, no, you're completely wrong that the idea of virgin from the Greeks is different from the idea of virgin in the Jews or in Hebrew. The Greeks did value virginity in that way. The Romans, not so much, but the Greeks did. Conclusion, I just want to say that I don't know exactly what your goal is by trying to distinguish Jesus from other gods, other than to suggest that the pagan religions are somehow less important or less worthy, or that the followers of those religions are somehow unable to um, achieve enlightenment. I think that seems to be the end goal here, but I'm not sure exactly. And I just want to say this, okay? I did this video in the spirit of education. All the information that I brought forth either comes from primary sources or actual scholarly sources. They are not people with agendas. They are not people who, a lot of them aren't even pagans. The idea that they would want paganism to rule over the world or anything like that is ridiculous, because a lot of these people actually come from the Abrahamic traditions. So, what I don't understand is, the disconnect where somebody can, believe strongly in their religion and love their God, and, want to be closer to them, but not respect other people's desire to do the same thing. You know, what I don't understand is how somebody can look at a relationship that someone is trying to form with their deity, and say that that is wrong, but they're right. It doesn't make sense to me. I believe that if you have a true spirituality that's based on your own genuine feelings and not just being afraid to do something else, that if you are genuinely devout in your spirituality and you want to form a relationship with your deity, that's a good thing. And as long as you're not forcing your beliefs on other people, I applaud you for that. But the problem I see here is that what it seems like is going on is that you want to exalt Christianity above all other religions and say that only Christians are worthy of certain things. And that to me seems religiously intolerant. I really hope that's not what's going on here. But I hope that you take this video in good faith, and hopefully we can start a conversation about it.